Hello, thank you for joining in. This is going to be great. My name is Trisha. I'm a master gardener and I've been doing bonsai for at least 25 years that I know of. That's the date I have on some of my paperwork. So this talk is going to be, there's so much to cover with bonsai, and I've discovered that a lot of people who do want to talk about bonsai really just want to have a couple nice specimen trees out in their yard. So that's what this talk's going to be mainly on. You being able to go to a nursery, how to look for a potential tree, take it home, work on it, and have something nice you can be proud of. If you want to make a stand, that looks great too. I'm going to just go over some basic things first. Bonsai basically means tree in a pot, and it can be any size. I have a friend who grows bonsai this big, and there's some that are taller than I am. Started in China in the 1400s, and the way we keep the trees small is by trimming the branches and the roots together. You don't just do one or the other. The top of the tree directly reflects what's going on in the roots. So if you ever see something going on the left side of your tree, gosh, it's not looking good, start with the roots. That's where the problems originated. We create the movement by what we call directional pruning, where you prune one way and then the leaf follows that. Using the wire is one of the main ways that we get movement of the stiffer branches, the branches we can't move by just trimming, and there we use the thicker wire. Most bonsai, pretty much all bonsai are outdoor trees. There's kind of a misconception that they're indoor trees. They're really not. I have 3 ficus trees that I have to bring in the house or keep in a greenhouse, but for the most part, when you're out looking for a tree, you're thinking outdoor tree. They have to have fast draining soil. You can't put a bonsai in your regular garden soil. And as you get further down the road with this tree, you're going to be getting a shallower and shallower pot. There's many styles of bonsai. And the best way for you to learn, the internet is great, but the best way for you to learn is just driving around looking at trees. You're going to see upright trees. You're going to see trees blowing all one direction, like on the coast. Trees that come up and out and then go down, which we call a cascade. Nature is the best teacher, and it's probably where most of these styles came from. The goal of the bonsai tree is to create age. You want the branches to be going down. You want a big, thick trunk, maybe some broken branches. Possibly the tree was hit by lightning. That's the goal. And most trees and shrubs are suitable, especially up here. There's 2 that aren't. Anything that doesn't like its roots disturbed, like if you read in a book that it says don't disturb the roots, that's not a good candidate. Or a tree that has a definite taproot, because then you're just fighting the tree's natural tendencies. I take notes on all my trees. I take photos. And if you're going to get serious about the hobby, you'll be really glad if you take a picture of a tree just as you got it from the nursery. Going online and learning, YouTube has hundreds of really good videos. Can't recommend that strongly enough. All of these trees need 4 basic things: light, air, water, and food. And everybody's really good about the light, water, and food, most people, but the air is sometimes an issue. People will buy a tree in a plastic pot. They'll cover the top with rocks, bark, something, and they'll set that plastic pot on the concrete or something solid. Those roots aren't getting any air. So I take all my trees and I elevate them. I have 2 little wooden blocks so the air can pass under them, and then nothing goes on the top of the soil. All bonsai trees need what they call taper. They start wider at the bottom and they go up, just like a natural tree in the wild. A tree that just kind of like this really doesn't have very much interest. You want a wider tree, wider base. And when you're out looking, that's a goal, something you're looking for. You want to create depth within the tree. You want to create what they call foliage pads, like a bunch of foliage here, here, here. And you want alternating branches all around the tree, 360 degrees. I've seen bonsai that are right, left, and they don't have that depth that really looks nice. You don't want to take more than 1/3 of the trees, either roots or branches, off at the same time. It's kind of tough on these trees, putting them in a pot, cutting them, bending them, wiring them. So that's just a good rule of thumb. Trust me, I've done it, and they die. You don't want to take too many of the branches and needles off. The branches and the leaves are solar panels for the tree. They need it. They need it to grow, to create sugars, for your trees that are going to go dormant, to store up for the coming winter. It's good to keep the weeds out of the base of the tree. It's the same thing. The weeds compete with the tree for the nutrients, and they also block the air. And you want to stick with your tree's natural tendencies. Something like a sequoia or a Douglas fir in the wild grows straight. It's in a forest canopy, so you wouldn't see that tree all bent into something gnarly. California juniper, definitely all gnarly. So look at your tree online if you're not sure and get some good ideas. Spend time looking at your tree. Round and round. I have this on what's called a turntable, which is another thing that you can buy. You can also get a kitchen turntable if your tree isn't too heavy. I think you can buy them at Walmart for a couple bucks. I turn trees round and round and round, trying to decide what branches I want to keep and what's the front of my tree. Once I've found that front, I take a chopstick and I mark it. If you can't find a for sure front, you can mark 2 spots. Maybe this is the front, maybe this is the front. Give yourself some options because things do change, branches die. Keep in mind too that trees in a pot suffer more from the cold than they do in the ground. This is a western red cedar. In the ground, it's totally fine. In the snow, in a pot, or especially in a ceramic pot, you just might want to put it on the ground up next to the house during a cold snap. Trees grow faster in the ground too. I have probably a good half of my trees are growing in the ground right now in like a raised bed. Most people have vegetables. I have bonsai trees, and their trunks have quadrupled in just a couple of years. So if you really want to get some thickness on a tree, buy a few, stick them in the ground, and then a couple to work on. Works really great. And let your tree grow. Every time you trim it, repot it, reduce its roots, you're slowing it down. So one of the best ways to get a tree to grow is just let it grow. Don't keep trimming it, working on it. You need to make your basic shape, but don't keep snip, snip, snip. There's 3 basic kinds of trees that work really great here. You have your conifers, which are your pines, junipers, spruces, cedars, your broadleaf trees, your azaleas, holly, boxwood, and then your beautiful deciduous trees, which maples, elms, larch. And whatever you choose, read up, learn about that particular tree because they're all different. Talk about acquiring some trees. There's a couple different ways that you can get kind of an instant tree. You can buy a totally finished bonsai tree, which is very expensive. If you know what you're doing, that's a great thing to do, but if you don't do it. Chances of you killing it are kind of high. You can go and collect trees out of the forest, whatever, but you have to have permission and you have to know what you're doing. And the success rate is very low. I know people who go out into the hills routinely and maybe 1 out of 50 trees they collect live. I have a friend who recently was given a couple trees in a big pot, and she's going to turn those into some nice patio specimens, and that's a great way. You see a tree at your neighbor's house with a nice big thick trunk, maybe you can talk them out of it. And the nurseries, which is what we're going to kind of talk about. You're going to go to a nursery, and there's a word, it's called Nana, N-A-N-A, and that means any kind of a tree with little leaves. 5-gallon trees from nurseries work really good. 2 or 3s are nice, but a 5-gallon is a nice, good size. Okay, shopping. Great idea to take your phone or a Sunset Western Garden book, something similar to the nursery, and if it says in there, like talking about don't like root disturbs, then that's not a good candidate. So you're just going to get down on your hands and knees and scrounge around looking for trees with a nice wide base and a taper. Try and dig down into the roots, see if there's any kind of a nice root flare. If you see that on one side of the tree, it's got these beautiful roots, but on the other side, you keep digging and there's nothing, pass that tree by. You don't want that. Once you do find one that you like, you can actually very frequently just kind of tap the pot and pull the tree out of the pot. You're also looking for interesting features, any kind of movement in the trunk, and the fattest trunk you can find. If there's 10 boxwoods, dig through, try and find the one with the fattest trunk. Try not to get distracted by flowers, leaves, colors, things like that, because that's really not what's important right now. You're building your base. You're making the foundation of your house. And when you get the tree home, leave it alone for about a month. And this is so hard to do, but you changed it to a new environment, new watering practices, different sun, water, everything. Just let it sit and make sure that it's okay before you start working on it. I brought a couple trees that I did not start myself. I start most of my trees, but these are trees that I've bought up here in the Pacific Northwest. One is a euonymus, a cedar, a boxwood, and that's it, 3. So you can see those trees, and naturally they didn't look like this when I bought them. This is a crepe myrtle tree. I brought this from Southern California, and it's well over 25 years old. I got it from a nursery probably 30 years ago and just had it in a pot like you could do. And then I decided to turn it into a bonsai. And I now am working on my pads and my apex, and it's at the final stage of refinement for a tree. This is a western red cedar I bought at a local nursery. I'm going to be working on it, and then in the spring I'll be putting it in a growing pot of some type and donating it to our Master Gardener plant sale. So if you want to bid on this tree, you can do that later. So one of the first things you're going to do is, like I said, you're going to look at your tree, turn it around and round and round. Get the weeds out of the bottom. You don't want all these weeds. They compete for nutrition. Get rid of them. So finding the front of the tree sometimes can be challenging, but turn the tree around, try and find the area, the front, that's open on the bottom. It can be more crowded at the top, but you want to be able to see that flare in the bottom. And then visually, look at your branches. You've got left, right, back, all the way up the tree. I used to actually take a piece of tape and mark the ones I wanted to keep or the ones you want to lose, because I've accidentally chopped off the wrong branches before. That works really good. So once I found my front, I take some good old chopsticks and I put it right there. So even when this tree is sitting on the bench, I always know where the front is. Okay, really important thing is to keep any branches that are growing down at the very base of your tree. I just scraped this out a little bit, and you can see a branch right here, way down there. Leaving that branch will help this trunk thicken up. Okay, I'm going to talk about some tools. You're not going to need a lot of tools to start off with. Later on, you'll gather many like I have. One tool you're going to need is called a concave cutter. And there's many sizes. This is a large one for larger trees. I have 2 that are bigger than this. This is kind of a small, narrow one for my small trees. The most important thing is that it fits your hand and that it fits and works on the trees you have. It's easy to break a tool trying to cut a branch that's too big. Some scissors, good sharp scissors with long nose. You can get all these at bonsai suppliers. Sugawa's here local has many things. And some wire cutters, just good old-fashioned wire cutters. You need an oil rag for your tools. You always want to keep them clean, oiled, sharpened. And I have this cool little saw that I like. It's made by Silky. And it's real nice on certain types of trees to just be able to make a clean saw rather than chopping at it. And some lightweight gloves are nice. And wire. Many kinds of wire. This is all aluminum wire. It's cheap. It comes in sizes 1 through 5, I believe. If you were to go buy wire, a 2.5 would be a real good suggestion. It's perfect for transplanting, and you can wire a lot of things with it. And you can also double it if you want to turn it into like a number 4 or a stronger wire. You just put 2 layers of it. So I'm going to be taking off the real small. There's a few here that are like 2 inches. I'm going to be getting rid of those. Kind of hard to do so you can see. So we'll just cut that. This. Just getting rid of some of the fluff. And some of it you can just get off with your fingers. So just some of it I'm just pulling off. See, already you're getting a little bit of shape by just getting some of that stuff out of there. So we have a branch here, a branch here, here. We're trying to be taking this branch because it's too thick. The branches at the bottom, like in nature, need to be your thickest branches. And even though this seems like it's at a good place, it's way too thick. These concave cutters cut all the way down so you get a nice flush fat cut, just like flat cut. So we have one here. Rid of this. Here, we've got a branch back here. We have a branch here, 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 on up the tree. Try to make it easy. This tree is apically dominant. 9 out of 10 trees are, which means a lot of growth happens up here and not so much down here. It's good to thin a little of this. You don't need to take it off, and you never want to top your tree. People come in and top them and think they look real great, but you're really stunting the growth. Let that top go. You can trim some of this back, and when you do that, some of the strength of the tree comes back down to the bottom part of the tree, which is where you want it. I'm going to be doing just a little bit of some basic thinning. I usually start at the bottom. Doesn't matter though. People have their own preference what they want to do. You don't want to take too much of the bottom stuff off because we want these branches to thicken. The more needles, the more leaves, the faster things thicken. And some of these branches are a little thicker than they need to be, so a lot of the lower branches we're just going to kind of leave. Some of these upper ones I'm going to just thin. Just get rid of some of the extra stuff. And a lot of times you can just thin it in half. You're not taking too much, and this doesn't have to be pretty like later on. This also allows more sunlight to get down to the bottom of the tree, so the lower branches will grow faster. That light is the really, really important thing. See here we have these going up, so let's just stop those from going up too far. I'm taking the leaves, but I'm not actually topping the tree. Some of you are going to think I'm doing that, but I'm not. So continuing just to thin a little bit. At some point, probably all of this will disappear. Not right now, though. We need to thicken up this a lot. I use these little tags in my trees to remind me when it was repotted and what it is. Because sometimes in the winter, all the trees look alike from the leaves if they're deciduous. So I'll put something like this in a tree, just down in the soil. These are those old blinds that people used to have 20 years ago. It's also a good idea to leave one weed in your tree, and that weed will wilt way before the tree will if the tree's overly thirsty. So it's a good watering guide. We're gonna wire this, and what I'm basically gonna do, because this is a Douglas fir, is just bend the branches down and maybe give them a little movement, not a lot. Douglas firs grow straight. Wiring is not anything I can teach here, but like I said, if you go online, you'll find a lot of videos which will show you how to do it. You wire at a 45-degree angle, just basic info. You wire kind of loose. You support your branch. And you don't bend anything until you have everything on the tree wired, because you're never for sure where you're going to go. I used one piece of wire and I fulcrumed it on the trunk. And then I'm doing 2 branches with 1 piece of wire. But for a beginner, that's probably not a good idea. Just do 1 branch with a piece of wire. Try and avoid leaves and branches if you can. It's not a big deal if you don't. Here I'm at the end, and this is the wire's way too strong for this branch, but that's okay. And then I'll cut the wire. Save these, they're aluminum. I belong to the Portland Bonsai Club. It's called BSOP, Bonsai Society of Portland. If you can't remember that, don't worry about it. Just Google Portland Bonsai. It's a great club, and you can learn so much there. I won't do this whole tree, but pretty much the purpose of this is to bend these branches down. You want the tree to look like it's been hailed on and beaten up. And bring it around, bring the branches maybe where you want them. So I'll do the whole tree as we go up. A couple words of wisdom I already talked about. Know your tree. Number 1 mistake I've made, and that most bonsai people do, is they don't learn about their tree. So whatever you buy or end up with, go online, type in boxwood bonsai, and write down, take notes, learn about that. The gentleman who taught me bonsai had a nice little phrase that he always said to me, and it was, cut now, fun now, cut later, better tree. And it's true. If you wait, have patience. Patience is part of what bonsai is. You'll get a better tree. Thank you.